There's a couple questions I'm going to just combine.
Okay.
Denise, Chuck, and Tatanisha asked a couple of questions. How do you integrate the culture in a change-resistant environment? What are some best practices for shifting the culture in an organization? And then Chuck asked, how do you deal with culture change? Because lean is a new way of doing business. People have to change their ways to become process people, problem solvers. Top management has to come out from behind their desks to work with people. This is a big paradigm shift in any organization. Culture change must be addressed before any lean tools can be used effectively. So there's a lot we can kind of unravel there. What are your first thoughts, Greg, on let's say, resistance to change?
Yeah, well, I just, I mean, there's a lot of sentences here. The one that just jumped out at me was, how do you deal with culture change? And I would say, hopefully well. You know, hopefully I deal with it well, but I know that that's not what I was really asking. You know, I think what we oftentimes think of is that culture is something that you can build, like a building. You know, oh, I'm going to go get some 2x4s and this and that, and all of a sudden we're going to have the culture right. But what we need to remember is that culture is just a manifestations of all the behaviors of the people in the organization, right? So that you can't. It's an illogical sentence to say, well, we're not going to start improving until we have a better culture. Well, no, actually, the way you develop a continuous improvement culture is by doing the action of improving. So, I mean, that's what jumps out in my mind right off the bat. I don't know, Mark, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, something I've been writing about. I talked about it in one of our KaiNexus webinars. This idea of this label that I'm kind of uncomfortable with. People say, oh, others are being resistant to change. I think the first thing we need to do as leaders is to ask why. Why are people being resistant? Often there are good reasons. They have questions. They're not being engaged. I've never heard anyone say that others are resistant to improvement, right? So a lot of times people are resistant to a change because they don't think it's going to be an improvement. So I think one way to try to bring the culture around, I try to encourage leaders, when you're sensing resistance, don't stop engaging with that person and write them off. That's when you need to really engage more deeply with the person. And I think it's not just a matter of telling them why they should change, but it's got to be more of an exchange, listening, and trying to bring people along. And it's the last point I'll make on this is I've been studying psychology. All right, but I was saying, motivational interviewing, they point out the idea that even when change is positive, it is a natural step in the change process to go through a phase of resistance. And I think that's all the more reason to help people through that instead of just labeling them as being bad.
I think the more resistance that you're feeling or sensing probably means that you need to do more listening. I mean, that was the word that came out in all the words you were saying to me is listening, because the more that you can understand the persona, the place, just the experience of the frontline worker, the more you will be grounded in a similar base to then start working from that journey. Right? There's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to pull you along, or worse, I'm going to whip you from behind to get you to move. And another thing is I'm going to join you arm in arm, and then when you're ready to walk, I'll be here ready to walk with you. And so I think there's a lot of resistance when people feel like they're being changed or being told they need to change.
Right. Yeah, and the motivational. Go ahead. Motivational interviewing would encourage us to draw out from people what their motivations are for change. So I think it's good when I think people move along. One level is we're telling people what to do, and then they're resistant. And I think there's another level where people say, well, we should explain the why. But I think even better is sort of trying to draw out from people what their motivations are. And if their motivations are wholly unaligned with the organization, I would say that that's a leadership challenge. Back to I think what Chuck and Tatanisha was asking. I think culture change in a lot of ways starts at the top, with executives modeling behaviors that they want to see in the culture. So I think Chuck is right. They need to get out of their offices get out of conference rooms. I think to your point a minute ago, I think we can start improving. We can use lean tools without the culture going from here to here. But I think there is a risk that if the culture doesn't progress, the tools will lose effectiveness. Continuous improvement momentum would be lost without kind of initial steps leading to broader culture change. What do you think on that?
There's another word that comes to mind as we're talking through this. To me, it's trust. And if you are a frontline worker and you don't trust your leadership, it's going to create a environment that's going to become really difficult to get anything done. So I think it's really important for leadership to be as transparent as humanly possible. I don't know why leadership would want to hide anything at all, but the more transparent you can be, the more someone's going to trust you and understand your motivations are coming from a good place. And I think I heard a really great quote recently. Shingo apparently said that the order of importance for improvement is better, easier, faster, cheaper, in that order, right? And so I think that speaks volumes, because really the first orders of importance for improvement are all centered around the worker. And then when you have kind of established that, and then you can kind of really get people to start moving with change. And what's interesting is with the data that we see in KaiNexus, if you're just doing truly bottom-up improvements and you're not telling what people should be improving on, you're not making it thematic in any way, almost invariably, staff satisfaction is one of the highest categories of improvements that come in. Then as time goes on, you start getting into kind of quality, safety, and cost, which I find that to be really interesting, that just kind of the natural order of selection of things lets that happen. And that won't happen unless you truly come from a good place as a leader, a proper place, and people will see right through you if you have ulterior motives on trying to change people versus trying to create a culture, or at least allow a culture to happen. Maybe that's the better way to say it.
Yeah, and I think trust is built through working on safety. Leaders focusing on the fundamentals, the things that matter to staff, is really important. Talking about resistance to change, there's another Shingo quote I was reminded of recently. Shigeo Shingo, the late Shigeo Shingo, who is considered one of the creators of the Toyota production system, said 90% of resistance is cautionary. And I think that when employees are being cautious, that's all the more reason for leaders to continue the engagement rather than saying you're bad.
But I do think there is a role for leaders to, and I don't know a better word, maybe Mark, you have a better word for this, but sometimes I call myself the agitator. And I'm not agitating to kind of create, chaos and meanness. What I'm doing, I feel like sometimes I get brought in, let's say, on a marketing team or on a sales team or a CE team, and I just want to kind of stir things up to say, hey, there are no assumptions that we need to have here. Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? Just because sometimes when someone says something that's, quote, stupid, if you will, even though I'm heavily putting that into quotes, it ends up kind of putting a different framing on something that you hadn't thought of before. Like, oh, I didn't even think about that in that way. And all of a sudden, sometimes when you turn the corner of the building, you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. That's right. Oh, and that was just a couple of feet away, but you couldn't get there until someone said something different. So I do think there's a role for the agitator, and you can see that with Paul Akers. I mean, he is like in your face, and he's kind of crazy and this and that. But what he's really doing is he's kind of agitating status quo to kind of like say, hey, what can we do and what can we filter out that's better?
I would say Paul is energetic. How's that?
Quite.
Yeah.
He had this. I saw this video. He's literally going around on one of those razor things that like your kids go around in because he's got to get from point A to point B quicker. I was like, that's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I know we're having some audio connection issues, but I cannot believe that 30 minutes have gone by. We already, for our next one, we'll have the first couple questions, and we can't wait to gather more. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, Mark, as well. So I always like to say there's no better day than today to improve. So get out there and practice continuous improvement.